Hey guys, first two regardsmen here, and today we'll be talking about difficulty. Space Marine 2 has added multiple game modes since its original launch, changing how the game feels, how punishing the combat is, and how much the game expects from you as a player. One of the major questions players ask in this game is when they should start pushing into these higher level difficulties, what mode is the best for them to start in, and what really changes between them, because there are not only hidden modifiers in a lot of these difficulties, but also entirely new mechanics. So in this video, we're going to go through the various difficulty options and modes this game has to offer, their major differences, and how you should go about taking them on for the first time, and which you should prioritize. Space Marine 2 has three major PvE game modes. The first is called Operations, which has a total of 6 difficulties. The other game modes are Siege Mode and Stratagems. These modes both separate their difficulty into only two variants called Normal and Hard. We'll talk about those more later because the first one we're going to go over here is the Operations mode. This is the intended game mode for players to start on and has had 2 additional difficulties added to it since launch. Operations difficulty levels are categorized as minimal, average, substantial, ruthless, lethal, and of course absolute difficulty. The first minimal difficulty is something that most players will barely engage with since it's really only intended for brand new players. This mode has fewer enemies, plenty of equipment drops, and even your stims will heal 50% of your total HP rather than the usual 35%. You also take 0 damage from your own equipment, and you have an increased revive speed on top of requiring 2 downs to get a mortal wound. Your dodge windows are also more generous, and you have a respawn timer of only 1 minute if you actually do end up dying. The next difficulty is called Average with a recommended level of 5, and this is the one I would suggest new players start at, as it is mostly the same as minimal, except the enemies are slightly stronger, and you'll start taking 25% damage from your own equipment with reduced pickup spawns overall. This is also the difficulty you will start finding mastercrafted armory data, which is mandatory for leveling your starting equipment, so the sooner you start collecting these, the better. The mid-tier difficulty is called Substantial. Suggested level requirement for this one is level 10, and this is where things will start getting a bit more intense for brand new players as enemies get yet another buff to HP, and the player's armor and health on top of their perfect dodge and invulnerability windows are reduced once more. 1 down on Substantial is all it takes to receive a mortal wound, and your overall equipment drops are reduced once again, yet your respawn timer remains 1 minute like all previous difficulties. This is a difficulty you will also start to see Artificer tier armory data, so it is a necessary step for most players in their progression through weapon tiers before they get to the even higher level difficulties. The difficulty after this is called Ruthless. This has a suggested level of 15 and was the highest option available at launch. This is where enemy HP caps out for standard operations, and your perfect dodge window, invulnerability window, and armor are reduced even further, on top of the player receiving more damage. Self-inflicted damage from your equipment goes up to 50% here, so start to be careful with your grenades, and ammo caches will also no longer be a source of infinite ammo and will instead restore your max ammo capacity a limited amount of times before they run out. The player's respawn time increases from 1 minute to 2 minutes here, and this is the first difficulty that relic tier armory data can be found that is required for the highest tier of standard weapon variants. The next difficulty is called Lethal with a suggested level of 25. This is the first of 2 challenge difficulties that are intended for players who want more in the standard armory data grind of the previous difficulty options, and this is also where player health and armor reductions cap out. Ammo caches will also restore even less ammo before they run out, and your respawn timer is further increased from 2 to 5 minutes. However, every execute of a Majoris or higher enemy will reduce your teammates' respawn time by 20 seconds. The time enemies remain execution state here is also reduced by 50%, and one of the most major changes is that players can encounter multiple extremis packs at once, so watch out for those double lictors. Possibly the most frustrating mechanic on this difficulty though is the enrage mechanic. On lethal difficulty and above, when a Majoris enemy dies, gets their reinforcement call interrupted, or they are the last one alive, they can become what is called enraged. This is represented by a glowing red or purple aura around them. They will receive a full heal upon going enraged, alongside a dramatic buff to their damage and immunity to all but the most powerful staggering effects like block weapon explosions. Players need to be mindful of enraged enemies because they are some of the most damaging enemies in the entire game, though thankfully only Majoris can go enraged, and Extremis plus Terminus level enemies are left unaffected by this mechanic. If players complete all missions on lethal difficulty, they are rewarded with a special survivor helmet as well. The final difficulty in operations is called Absolute. This is very similar to lethal difficulty, with the major changes being that you can encounter Extremis packs of 3 and 2 bosses in a single operation. operation. Bosses on this difficulty will spawn with a pack of Majors and potentially Extremis, and upon being reduced below 50%, they will call in further reinforcements. This can prove incredibly challenging for many players, but the player is rewarded with an armory data for every single boss they defeat on top of on-map pickups. Upon completing all difficulties on Absolute, the player is also rewarded with a unique pauldron. If you feel comfortable, you can jump into difficulties like Ruthless and Lethal early, but usually making sure you have the proper relic weapons and perks before jumping into Lethal or above is the best idea. Now, the Stratagems mode functions a bit differently from Operations. Stratagems are daily and weekly rotated operations that will have both positive and negative modifiers. Here there are only two difficulties I mentioned previously, with normal and hard. Normal difficulty is based on substantial difficulty from Operations, and hard mode is based on absolute difficulty. Now, hard mode also has a hidden modifier on top of the base difficulty and spawns of absolute mode, which is that players will deal 15% less damage and receive 30% more damage. The difficulty of a hard stratagem can still vary drastically beyond this, thanks to a multitude of battlefield conditions that can both help and hinder you depending on the mission. Some examples of these are conditions like you only live once, which can make your mission significantly harder by making it so you only have one life if you go down, or Laramine cells, which can make your stratagems far easier. If you want a full list of these conditions, I will leave a link to them on the Space Marine 2 wiki in the description below, but stratagems are the intended endgame content of Space Marine 2 currently, and they have a rotation of both daily and weekly missions that will reward you with the valuable accolades currency. This currency can be used to purchase heroic weapon variants and unique armor pieces, so stratagems are a pretty valuable thing overall. The final PvE mode is Siege mode. Siege mode, like stratagems, only has a normal and hard difficulty option, but the normal difficulty in Siege mode, unlike the stratagems, is based on average difficulty, and the hard Siege mode is based on lethal difficulty. Now, Siege mode has a wave system that progressively gets more difficult, with wave 5 having you encounter one boss spawn, wave 10 having you encounter 2 simultaneous boss spawns, and wave 15 having you encounter the fabled triple boss spawn simultaneously. Independent of which difficulty you play, starting at wave 16, you enter what is called endless waves, and the player deals 2.5% less damage and will receive 5% more damage every wave up to wave 45, where it caps at 75% less damage dealt and 150% more damage taken. Now, the vast majority of players will not have to encounter the ridiculous damage enemies can actually deal at these higher waves, but you should keep in mind that enemies do get ridiculous at the upper levels of this mode. Siege mode will reward you with unique colored weapon skins randomly for completing each section, and a unique helmet if you complete wave 15 or higher on hard mode. But that is pretty much everything I have to say about difficulty levels in Space Marine 2. Hopefully this guide helped you, as there are a lot of difficulty options and modes in this game. I also want to say a special thank you to my channel members, as you help me make guides like this and keep the channel alive. And if you want to ask me questions about the game or just come hang out live, you can find me live here on YouTube or Twitch with a link in the description below, alongside a link to my community Discord. And as always guys, if you like content like this, subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and take it easy. Bye.